In April 2003, I was in Masaka at a hardware shop, minding my own business. And across the road, I saw a gentleman walking briskly towards me. People tried to stop him, but nobody could dare stop him. I'm always interested and inquisitive of people of that kind. So I asked a colleague of mine I was with, who is that gentleman? They told me he is a cobbler, men's shoes, polishes shoes. His workstation was a bench, which was 2 streets across where I was. He came to me, wanted to give me a hug. I wasn't very sure whether it should be a hug. So I extended my hand to say hello. Mumbled a few words. That's when I realized he was deaf. So I asked the lady on whose shop he has his workbench. And they told me his name is Moses Kilangwa. He lives in Kidda, which is a village close to Masaka town. But where the dots connected is when she told me he was born in Kimanya. So on the screen, in the right-hand corner, that's me in 1978. That's when I left my village of Kimanya because of the war. That's when the Tanzanian People's Defense Forces were at war with the government of Uganda, and that's the war that got rid of Idi Amin. That gentleman is deaf. We grew up together in the same village. He remembered me 2003. That is 24 years since we last met. I couldn't remember him. He even made fun of the fact that he was surprised when people were trying to stop him coming to me because it's only him who knew how I had small skinny legs and a very big afro hair, playing football with him in the dusty parts of Kimanya. He was so interested to know my story. So I got the lady who knew a bit of sign language to help interpret. And my story was quite long, but Moses summarized it into one word. My story was, I left Masaka because of the war to go to Kampala and continue with my education. When I finished primary education, I didn't come back to the village. I went to a boarding school where I spent 6 years pursuing secondary education. When I finished secondary education, I got grades that enabled me to go to Makerere and spent 3 years pursuing a bachelor's degree. When I finished Makerere University, I was very ambitious and very aspirational, and I wanted more and more things. And I was fortunate, most of my family was in England by the time in exile. So I joined them and spent another 11 years where I trained as a chartered accountant, a chartered tax advisor. I joined PwC and worked there for another 8 years. So I came back to Uganda in 2002 and I met him in 2003. Now the beauty with sign language is that there's not so much grammar. So you leave Masaka to go to school in Kampala, the symbol is education and school. You don't come back after primary, you go to college for another 6 years, the sign is education and school. You go to Makerere, the sign is education and school. And you go go to England and train and get qualifications and have a good life and a good job because of education. So Moses summarized the difference between me and him. The Kamulegeya in the corner of 1978 and the professional, qualified, chartered accountant, tax advisor, and God knows whatever status was being attributed to me by the community in one word: education. And Moses said something profound. He told me he wished he had gone to school. Ladies and gentlemen, I was a senior manager in PwC, earning not minimum income, and leaving Masaka, coming back home, that really challenged me. I asked myself, how many other Moseses of the current generation are being denied education because of ignorance, because of stigma, because of lack of awareness? And I decided not to lament, not to analyze, but to start a school for deaf children. So in 2004, with support from my sister, she's passed on since then, and friends of ours we used to live with in England, I got a donation, which I used to buy a piece of land and rebuild Masaka School for the deaf. Not only did we build the school for deaf children, but we did it in such a way that we wanted to change the stigma. After building the school, we realized there was another problem. Stigma was rife in the community. So we went out of our way to create an environment that was very bright, very conducive, very welcoming, and very undeaf, if there is a word of that kind. So much so that parents, guardians, community service people wanted to come to our school. The school has been going for the last 20 years, and our alumni make us really proud. In addition to that, we made sure that to break the stigma, we try and include our children in the community, while at the same time making sure that the community understands that deafness is not contagious. Deafness is actually a silent disability. If you meet somebody blind and they're crossing the road, most likely you will help her or him cross the road. If you meet somebody in a wheelchair and they're outside of the lift, however much hurry you are in, most likely you will get out of the way or push their chair and support them. But if you found somebody who is deaf and they are walking in the road and you are driving, you will say a few words. Hopefully they're good enough they don't hear them, because you are calling them all sorts of names without knowing that actually they cannot hear. Only 5% of deaf people worldwide are born deaf, which is called congenital deafness. In the case of Uganda and most developing countries, people lose their hearing as a result of poor medical care. We call the 4 M's: measles, mumps, meningitis, and malaria. Measles, mumps, meningitis, and malaria is the biggest cause of loss of hearing. On the screen are some of our alumni. We have been very successful. Why we've been very successful is because we did not look for handouts from the international community. They helped us build a school. They supported us for the first 5 years. We had to own this project, we had to own this problem, and we had to come up with local solution. So at our school, I bought all the neighboring land, and we are using that land to grow coffee. We do not only grow coffee, we process it and we package it, and our coffee, I'm told, is the best coffee in Uganda. It is so good that it's not on the shelves in the supermarkets. It is a specialty coffee, it's not a commodity for anyone. But we produce on order, otherwise whatever we process, we export, because we don't want to wait for 3 months to be paid by a supermarket when we can actually access the market and get money immediately. One of the challenges I've had to deal with personally as the owner, the founder, the funder, the sponsor is what happens when you're not here? And that question usually is, actually, what happens when you die? Because I say, I'm not here. You mean when I've traveled? And the question is no. If anything happens. Anything happens like what? Like my bank account is closed? No. Until they actually say the word. So the fact that that question kept lingering on my mind forced me to think ahead of the time we are here and now. And for that reason, in 2022, 21 to be specific, when everybody was under lockdown, I decided to set up a vocational training institute. Because for the last 10 or so years, I was being asked to build a secondary school. And I said, I'll not do that. Why did I build a vocational training institute? 3 reasons. Number one, in 2012, I set up an endowment fund to save for the school. And it was going to pay out a lump sum after 10 years. And the 10 years, it matured in 2021. Number 2, during lockdown, we had so many hearing children who were no longer attending school, who are coming to our school for the deaf because it had a small section for vocational training to learn hands-on skill. So I saw that as a great opportunity now to set up a nice, modern, inclusive vocational training institute because I'd gotten the money. I also had seen the need, but most importantly, it was for profit, so it was going to be supporting the school for the deaf. So our Masaka Vocational Training Institute is beautiful, as you can see. Very, very nice, modern, purpose-built institute. But most importantly, it's a model in the sense that currently, 2.5 years after opening it, we have 160 learners, of which 18 are deaf children. And when you integrate the deaf learners, the young people with the hearing, you actually deal with the issue of stigma. So the deaf learners and the hearing are together. Now, another question. This is all relying on you as an individual. So what happens when you're not here? And every time I get that question, I get to realize that actually I have less time around than I've been. I'm 58 years. I don't want to be around for another 50 years. What would I be doing at 105? 108, actually. So I did something that not many Ugandans do. I decided to do a joint venture partnership with Masaka Diocese. Masaka Diocese, in particular, the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has got very, very strong foundation in terms of values, faith, but also they are very, very good in educational institutions. So this school was never for me. So I had to make sure that when I'm no longer here, this school continues. And I did that by transferring part ownership of that school to Masaka Diocese. And I did it together with the Bishop of Masaka Diocese, Bishop Silver's Jumba, and that's the picture you see there. It is very important to emphasize that very often many people with good intentions start things which end with them because of attachment, because of status, because of identity. But given where my story started with Moses, there was no way I was going to allow this school to end when I end. In conclusion, we live for such a short time compared to the time we'll be dead. And we will all die. Hopefully, not soon. Everything you do for yourself, and it's for you, yourself, and you, it ends with you. But whatever you do for the benefit of others, whatever you do that makes a difference in other people's lives, whatever you do that is others-centric, and it survives your time, that's what counts, that's what matters, that's what endures, and most importantly, that's how you will be remembered. I thank you.